The bitter December wind sliced through Elena Martinez's worn jacket as she stumbled out the back door of Rosario's diner, her body screaming with exhaustion after 14 hours hunched over industrial sinks, 3 consecutive shifts, 42 hours in the past 3 days with barely 4 hours of sleep between them. Her fingers, cracked and bleeding from the harsh commercial detergent, trembled as she counted her meager tips. $23. Not even enough to cover the electricity bill, let alone the 3 months of rent she already owed. The text message from her landlord still burned in her mind, each word a hammer blow to her already shattered hope. Final notice. Vacate by tomorrow morning or I'm calling the police. No more excuses. Elena's back spasmed painfully as she began the long walk home, each step sending jolts of agony up her spine from standing motionless for so many hours. She couldn't afford the bus fare. Every dollar had to be saved for Sophia, her 5-year-old sister who was probably already asleep at Mrs. Chen's apartment down the hall. The elderly widow was the only person willing to watch Sophia for free while Elena worked herself to the bone, and even that kindness came with pitying looks that cut deeper than any knife. The streetlights flickered overhead as Elena cut through the alley behind Madison Street, casting shadows that seemed to reach for her like grasping hands. This neighborhood grew more dangerous with each passing month, but the shortcut saved her 15 minutes. 15 minutes she could spend holding Sophia before collapsing into dreamless sleep. She was thinking about tomorrow, about how she would tell her baby sister they were being thrown onto the streets, when her foot caught on something soft and yielding. Elena stumbled, catching herself against the grimy brick wall, her heart hammering as she looked down at what she had nearly trampled. At first, her exhausted mind registered only a bundle of expensive fabric, out of place among the garbage and broken bottles. Then she saw the small hand, pale and still against the dirty concrete. A child's hand. Elena dropped to her knees, ignoring the sharp pain as broken glass bit through her threadbare jeans. The dim light from a distant street lamp revealed a girl, no more than 8 years old, lying motionless between a rusted dumpster and the wall. Her clothes were impossibly fine, a cashmere coat that probably cost more than Elena earned in 6 months, patent leather shoes that gleamed even in the darkness. But it was the child's face that made Elena's blood run cold. The girl's complexion had turned a terrifying grayish blue, her lips nearly white. Elena pressed 2 fingers to the small neck and felt a pulse, weak and thready, fluttering like a wounded bird. The child's breathing came in shallow, irregular gasps that Elena recognized with sickening certainty. Something was desperately, dangerously wrong. Elena's nursing school training kicked in automatically, pushing aside her exhaustion as she assessed the unconscious child. Cold, clammy skin, rapid, shallow breathing, slight tremors running through the small body. She had seen these symptoms before during her clinical rotations at County General, had memorized them for exams she could barely afford the textbooks for. Severe hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar. Without glucose, this child's brain would begin to shut down within minutes. Elena frantically searched the girl's pockets, praying for a candy bar, glucose tablets, anything that could buy them time. Instead, her fingers closed around a smartphone, sleek and expensive, its rose gold case probably worth more than everything Elena owned combined. The lock screen glowed to life at her touch, revealing a single emergency contact. No name, no photo. Just one word that would alter the course of Elena Martinez's life forever. Papa. Her finger hovered over the call button for a heartbeat before she pressed it. The line connected almost instantly, as if someone had been waiting by the phone. Isabella. The voice that answered was deep and accented, carrying an authority that seemed to vibrate through the speaker. Something in that single word, his daughter's name spoken like both a prayer and a demand, made Elena's skin prickle with instinctive wariness. "This isn't Isabella," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My name is Elena. I found a little girl collapsed in an alley off Madison Street, near the old warehouse district. I think this is her father's number." The silence that followed was absolute, terrifying in its intensity. Elena could hear nothing but her own ragged breathing and the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city. Is she breathing? The man's voice had transformed into something cold and hard as steel, all pretense of calm stripped away to reveal something far more dangerous underneath. "Yes, but barely. I'm a nursing student. She's showing all the signs of severe hypoglycemia. Her skin is gray, she's barely responsive, and her pulse is weak. She needs glucose immediately or she could go into a coma. Do not move her. Do not call anyone else. I will be there in 8 minutes." The call ended before Elena could respond. She pulled the small body into her lap, wrapping her thin jacket around both of them to share what little warmth she had. The girl was so light, so fragile, her designer clothes doing nothing to protect her from the December cold. Stay with me, sweetheart, Elena whispered, rubbing the child's arms to stimulate circulation. Your papa is coming. Just hold on a little longer. The words caught in her throat as memory crashed over her. Another cold night, 3 years ago. The hospital waiting room where a doctor with tired eyes had told her that her parents hadn't survived the crash. Sophia, only 2 years old, screaming in Elena's arms without understanding why Mama and Papa would never come home. Elena had been helpless that night. She had held her baby sister and wept while her world collapsed around her. Not tonight. Not again. She would not let this child die alone in a dark alley while someone who loved her waited for a call that would destroy them. Then she heard it. The purr of powerful engines, multiple vehicles moving fast. Headlights swept across the alley entrance as 3 black SUVs appeared, their windows tinted dark as midnight, moving in perfect formation like predators closing in on their prey. The SUVs hadn't even fully stopped before doors flew open and men in dark suits emerged with military precision. They moved like shadows, securing the alley entrances, their hands resting near the unmistakable bulges beneath their jackets. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, every survival instinct screaming that she had stumbled into something far beyond a simple medical emergency. Then she saw him. Dominic Rossetti stepped out of the middle vehicle, and the air itself seemed to shift around his presence. He was tall, well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena would earn in a year. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and hard lines, but it was his eyes that made Elena's breath catch. Dark as midnight, cold as the winter wind, they swept the alley with predatory intensity before locking onto the small form cradled in her arms. In that instant, the ice in those eyes cracked. Isabella. He was beside them in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees on the filthy concrete without a moment's hesitation. His movements were urgent but controlled, as he produced a small medical kit from his coat pocket with the efficiency of long practice. Hypoglycemia, Elena said quickly. Severe. She's been unconscious for at least 5 minutes, probably longer. The man didn't question her assessment. His hands moved with familiar expertise as he prepared an injection, finding a vein in his daughter's arm with the precision of someone who had performed this exact procedure countless times before. Elena recognized the glucagon emergency kit, understood now what she was witnessing: type 1 diabetes, and a severe episode. Within moments, color began creeping back into the child's cheeks. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened to reveal eyes identical to her father's, confused and frightened. Papa? The word came out weak, barely a whisper. Something extraordinary happened to Dominic Rossetti's face. The cold mask shattered completely as he gathered his daughter into his arms, holding her as if she were made of glass and gold. His eyes closed, and Elena saw his lips move in what might have been a prayer. I'm here, Principessa. Papa's here. The tenderness in his voice was so at odds with everything else about him that Elena felt like an intruder, witnessing something impossibly private. She began to edge backward, ready to disappear into the night, and let this powerful stranger return to his world, while she returned to hers. Wait. The command froze her mid-step. Dominic Rossetti rose to his full height, his daughter still secure in his arms, and turned those penetrating eyes on Elena. She felt him cataloging every detail: her stained work uniform beneath the threadbare jacket, her cracked, bleeding hands, the dark circles under her eyes, the stubborn lift of her chin despite it all. He reached into his pocket, and Elena stepped back instinctively, her pride flaring. I don't want money, she said quickly. I didn't help her for a reward. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. Not a reward, he said, extending a business card made of heavy cream stock. An opportunity. Call this number tomorrow morning. I have a proposition for someone with your particular skills and character. Elena took the card automatically, watching as he carried his daughter to the waiting SUV. Within seconds, the vehicles had vanished into the night, leaving behind only the fading rumble of engines and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. She looked down at the card in her trembling hand. Heavy, expensive paper. No name, no title, no company. Just a phone number embossed in elegant silver script. Elena had no way of knowing that this small rectangle of paper would become the bridge between her world of poverty and survival, and a realm of power, danger, and ultimately, love. The morning sun offered no warmth as Elena stood on the cracked sidewalk, watching Mr. Hendricks change the locks on apartment 4B. Everything she and Sophia owned in this world sat at her feet in 2 black garbage bags. 3 years of struggling, of sacrificing, of fighting to keep them together, reduced to trash bags on a dirty street corner. Please, Elena had begged an hour earlier, her pride crumbling to dust. Just give me 1 more week. I'll have the money, I swear. Mr. Hendricks hadn't even looked at her. Should have thought about that 3 months ago. I got bills too, you know? Now Sophia stood beside her, small hand clutching Elena's torn jeans, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm hungry, Ellie. My tummy hurts. Elena's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled bills she had counted obsessively since last night. $4. $4 stood between her baby sister and starvation. Come on, mija. She forced brightness into her voice. Let's get you some breakfast. The corner store sold day-old bread for $1.50. Elena bought a small loaf and a carton of milk, watching Sophia devour the food with a hunger that made Elena want to scream at the unfairness of it all. She told her sister she had already eaten at work, ignoring the hollow ache in her own stomach that had become so familiar she barely noticed it anymore. They found a bench in Washington Park, their garbage bags piled beside them like shameful monuments to Elena's failure. Sophia fell asleep with her head in Elena's lap, exhausted from crying, a crust of bread still clutched in her tiny fist. Elena sat motionless, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of complete hopelessness pressing down on her chest. They had nowhere to go, no family left, no friends who could take them in. The shelters were full this time of year, and even if they weren't, Elena knew what happened to young women and little girls in those places. Her hand drifted to her jacket pocket, fingers brushing against thick paper. The business card. She pulled it out, studying the silver numbers that caught the weak December sunlight. What kind of proposition could a man like that possibly have for someone like her? Everything about him had screamed danger, from the armed guards to the cold authority in his voice. But his eyes when he held his daughter, the way his voice had broken on the word principessa. Elena looked down at Sophia's sleeping face, at the dark circles under her sister's eyes, at the way her cheekbones had become too prominent over the past hungry months. She had no choice. She had never really had a choice at all. The phone rang twice before a crisp female voice answered. Rossetti Residence. How may I direct your call? 30 minutes later, Elena and Sophia stepped off the bus in a neighborhood that might as well have been another planet. Manicured lawns stretched behind wrought iron fences. Luxury cars gleamed in circular driveways. The air itself seemed cleaner here, untouched by the grime and desperation of Elena's world. The Rossetti mansion rose before them like something from a fairy tale, all limestone walls and towering windows. Armed guards flanked the massive iron gates, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Elena gripped Sophia's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Whatever happens in there, she whispered, as much to herself as to her sister, I will protect you. I promise. Elena had never imagined that rooms like this existed outside of movies. Dominic Rossetti's study was larger than the entire apartment she had just been evicted from, every surface gleaming with the kind of wealth that seemed almost obscene. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked like they had never been touched. A massive mahogany desk dominated the center of the room, and behind it, tall windows overlooked gardens that stretched toward a horizon Elena couldn't see. A kind-faced housekeeper had taken Sophia to the kitchen for something to eat, promising warm soup and fresh bread. Elena had hesitated to let her sister out of her sight, but the exhaustion on Sophia's face and the rumbling of her small stomach had made the decision for her. Now she stood alone before Dominic Rossetti, acutely aware of every stain on her clothes, every crack in her bleeding hands, every way in which she did not belong in this world of crystal chandeliers and priceless art. Please, sit. Dominic gestured to a chair across from his desk, his voice carrying the same commanding authority she remembered from the alley. Today he wore a dark sweater that did nothing to soften the hard planes of his face. I don't like wasting time, Miss Martinez, so I'll be direct. Elena lowered herself into the chair, her back straight, refusing to be intimidated. My daughter Isabella has type 1 diabetes, he continued, a particularly severe and unstable form. Her blood sugar levels can crash without warning, as you witnessed last night. She requires round-the-clock medical monitoring by someone who understands her condition and can respond to emergencies. What happened to her previous caregiver? Something flickered in Dominic's dark eyes. She left. The pressures of this household proved too much for her. Elena understood what he wasn't saying. The armed guards, the tinted SUVs, the way his men had moved with military precision in that alley. This was not a normal family, and working here would not be a normal job. I'm offering you the position of Isabella's medical companion, Dominic said. You would live here, in the mansion. Your duties would include monitoring her glucose levels, administering medication, accompanying her to school and activities, and being available for any medical emergencies. He named a salary that made Elena's head spin, more money than she had earned in the past 2 years combined, enough to pay off every debt, to finish her nursing degree, to give Sophia the life she deserved. Your sister would live here as well, Dominic added, watching her face carefully. She would attend the same private school as Isabella. She would have everything she needs. Elena's throat tightened. It was too perfect, too generous. There had to be a catch. Why me? She asked. You could hire anyone. Experienced nurses, specialists. Why a broke nursing student you found in an alley? Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unreadable eyes. Because those specialists ran away when things became difficult. You stayed. You used your knowledge to save my daughter's life when you had every reason to walk away. He paused. And because you refused money when I offered it, that tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. Elena's mind raced. She knew what this man was, could feel the danger radiating from him, like heat from a furnace. Taking this job meant stepping into a world of shadows, of violence, of things she couldn't even imagine. You know who I am, Dominic said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. What I am. The question is not whether this life is dangerous. The question is whether you have the courage to stay despite that danger. Through the open door, Elena caught a glimpse of the hallway. Sophia was being carried back by the housekeeper, fast asleep, her small face peaceful for the first time in months. A smear of soup stained her chin. She looked fed, warm, safe. Elena looked at her sister, then back at the man who was offering her everything and demanding everything in return. She had no choice. She had never really had one at all. The bedroom took Elena's breath away. 2 queen-sized beds with crisp white linens, a sitting area with plush armchairs, an ensuite bathroom larger than Mrs. Chen's entire apartment. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a garden where roses bloomed despite the December cold. Sophia stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide as saucers. Ellie, she whispered, clutching her sister's hand. Is this really for us? Elena couldn't speak. The closet was already filled with clothes in their sizes, tags still attached. A toy chest overflowed with dolls and stuffed animals. On the desk sat brand new school supplies, coloring books, and a set of watercolor paints that Sophia had once stared at through a store window for 20 minutes before Elena had to drag her away. This is yours now, Elena managed. All of it. Sophia let out a shriek of pure joy and launched herself at the toy chest, pulling out a teddy bear nearly as big as she was. For the first time in months, maybe years, she looked like what she was supposed to be, a child, happy, carefree, safe. Elena blinked back tears she couldn't afford to shed. A knock at the door made her turn. Standing in the hallway was Isabella Rossetti, dressed in a simple blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat braid. She looked healthier than she had in the alley, color restored to her cheeks, but her eyes held a coldness that seemed wrong on a face so young. So you're the new one, Bella said flatly, her arms crossed over her chest. Elena crouched down to meet the girl's eyes. I'm Elena. We sort of met last night, but I don't think you remember. I remember. Bella's voice carried an edge of hostility that cut through the air. You're the one who found me. Papa said you saved my life. I'm glad I was there to help. The last one said she'd help too. Bella's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and wounded underneath. Miss Patricia. She promised she'd stay forever. She left after 2 months, said she couldn't handle the pressure. Elena felt her heart crack. This wasn't defiance. This was armor, carefully constructed by a child who had been abandoned too many times to risk hoping again. What about your mother? Elena asked gently. The ice in Bella's eyes fractured. Mama died when I was 3. I barely remember her. Papa has a picture in his office, but he never talks about her. 5 years old, motherless, with a condition that made her dependent on strangers who kept leaving. No wonder she had built walls so high. I'm not going to promise you forever, Elena said softly, because you wouldn't believe me anyway, but I'm going to promise you something else. I will prove it, every day, until you believe me. Before Bella could respond, Sophia appeared at Elena's side, the giant teddy bear trailing behind her. Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm 5. What's your name? Do you want to play with me? I have a bear. He doesn't have a name yet. Do you want to help me name him? The barrage of innocent enthusiasm seemed to physically stagger Bella. Her carefully constructed defenses had no protocol for this, no walls high enough to block a 5-year-old's fearless friendship. I'm Bella, she managed, looking uncertain for the first time. That's so pretty. Like the princess in the movie. Do you like princesses? I love princesses. Ellie says I'm her princess. A tiny crack appeared in Bella's armor. Not a smile. Not yet. But something close. Something possible. I have a lot of princess books, she said hesitantly. If you want to see them. Sophia grabbed Bella's hand as if they had been friends forever. Yes, show me everything. As the two girls disappeared down the hallway, Elena leaned against the doorframe, allowing herself one moment of fragile hope. She didn't notice the figure standing in the shadows at the end of the corridor. Dominic Rossetti watched in silence as his daughter walked hand in hand with a stranger's child, something unreadable shifting in his dark eyes. The training was intensive. Dr. Morrison, Bella's personal physician, spent 3 full days teaching Elena every detail of the girl's condition. The continuous glucose monitor that sent real-time readings to Elena's phone, the precise insulin dosages that varied based on meals, activity, and stress levels, the warning signs of both hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia, and the critical differences in treatment for each. Elena absorbed everything with the desperate focus of someone whose life depended on it, because in a way, it did. Not just her life, but Sophia's, and now Bella's too. By the 4th day, she thought she was prepared. She was wrong. Where is your monitor? Elena asked calmly, staring at Bella's bare arm where the device should have been attached. Bella shrugged, her face a perfect mask of innocence. It fell off. Monitors don't just fall off. Mine did. Elena found it an hour later, hidden inside a stuffed elephant in Bella's closet. She didn't say anything, simply reattached it, while Bella watched with defiant eyes. The next day, Bella refused to eat lunch at the scheduled time. Then she accidentally deleted the tracking app from her tablet. Then she hid her emergency glucose tablets in the garden. Each act of rebellion was a test, Elena realized. A challenge to see how quickly this new caretaker would give up, how soon she would pack her bags and disappear like all the others. On the 5th day, when Bella deliberately knocked her breakfast plate onto the floor rather than eat on schedule, Elena didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She didn't storm off to report to Dominic. Instead, she sat down on the floor beside the mess of scrambled eggs and toast and looked at Bella with quiet understanding. What do you want to control? She asked. Bella blinked, her defiance faltering. What? In your life? Everyone tells you when to eat, when to sleep, when to check your blood sugar. What do you actually want to choose for yourself? The question seemed to physically stagger the 8-year-old. Her mouth opened, then closed. No one had ever asked her that before. Bella's voice was small, uncertain. I want to pick what I wear, and what books I read, and I don't want to eat broccoli ever again. Elena nodded seriously. Done. You choose your clothes, your books, and no more broccoli. But the medical stuff, the eating schedule, the monitor, those aren't negotiable. That's the deal. Fair? For a long moment, Bella just stared at her. Then, slowly, she nodded. It wasn't a complete surrender, but it was a beginning. Sophia helped without knowing she was helping. Her boundless energy and uncomplicated affection wore down Bella's defenses in ways Elena never could. Within a week, the two girls were inseparable, building blanket forts and having tea parties with their stuffed animals. Sophia's laughter coaxing rare smiles from Bella's guarded face. Late one night, Elena rose to check on the girls and found the hallway already occupied. Dominic stood outside Bella's door, perfectly still, watching his daughter sleep through the narrow gap. The fierce crime lord had vanished completely. In his place stood something far more vulnerable, a father terrified of losing the only precious thing he had left. He didn't notice Elena watching from the shadows. She slipped back to her room silently, carrying with her a truth that complicated everything. The monster had a heart, after all. The next morning, a hand on her shoulder made Elena spin around. Marcus Chen stood behind her, his expression unreadable. A word of advice, he said quietly. Mr. Rossetti appreciates your work with Isabella, but don't let curiosity get the better of you. There are parts of this household you don't want to understand. Marcus's warning echoed in Elena's mind for days, but curiosity was a difficult thing to suppress when you lived inside a mystery. It happened by accident, 2 weeks into her employment. Elena had risen early to prepare Bella's morning insulin, taking a shortcut through the west wing that she had been told was off-limits. The door to Dominic's private office stood slightly ajar, and voices drifted through the gap. Castellano is making moves. Marcus's tone was clipped, urgent. 3 of our shipments intercepted this month. He's testing our defenses. Let him test. Dominic's voice was ice and steel. Victor Castellano has been a thorn in my side for 15 years. He thinks because his father is dead, he can finally take what he's always wanted. He's getting bolder. Our sources say he's been asking questions about Isabella, about her school, her schedule. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any words. When Dominic spoke again, his voice had dropped to something barely human. If he touches my daughter, I will burn his entire organization to the ground. Every soldier, every safe house, every member of his family. I will erase the Castellano name from existence. Elena's blood turned to ice. She backed away silently, her heart pounding so hard she was certain they could hear it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat in the mansion's library with her phone, searching through old news articles with trembling fingers. The Rossetti-Castellano conflict stretched back decades. Territory disputes, revenge killings, a bloody war that had claimed dozens of lives on both sides. The articles used words like alleged and suspected, but the truth was written between every line. She was living in the home of one of Chicago's most powerful crime lords. You look scared. Elena jumped. Bella stood in the doorway in her pajamas, hugging her teddy bear. Couldn't sleep, Elena managed. What are you doing up? Bella padded over and climbed onto the couch beside her. I heard you walking around. You walk loud when you're worried. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. I didn't know that. Miss Patricia used to walk loud too. Right before she left, Bella's voice was matter of fact, but her small hand found Elena's and held tight. Bella? Elena asked carefully. What happened to your mother? The girl was quiet for a long moment. Papa says it was a car accident, but I heard him talking to Marcus once. He said the Castellanos would pay for what they did to her. Her eyes met Elena's, ancient wisdom trapped in a child's face. It wasn't an accident, was it? Elena had no answer that wouldn't be a lie. The next morning, a guard appeared at her door. Mr. Rossetti wants to see you. Now. Elena walked into his office with her resignation already forming on her lips. She would take Sophia and leave. They would find another way. They always did. Dominic stood by the window, his back to her. You were outside my office yesterday morning. It wasn't a question. Elena lifted her chin. Yes. You heard my conversation with Marcus. Yes. He turned slowly, his dark eyes unreadable. And yet you're still here. You haven't packed your bags, haven't called the police, haven't run screaming into the night. Elena met his gaze without flinching. I heard enough to know I should be terrified, but not enough to make me abandon Bella. She paused. Or Sophia. We have nowhere else to go, Mr. Rossetti. And even if we did, your daughter needs someone who won't leave her. I made a promise. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice held something Elena had never heard before. Respect. You are either the bravest woman I've ever met, he said quietly, or the most foolish. The invitation arrived 3 weeks after Elena's confrontation with Dominic, a charity gala at the Palmer House Hilton, hosted by some of Chicago's most influential families, the kind of event that raised millions for causes while serving as a battleground for power plays invisible to ordinary eyes. Isabella must attend, Dominic explained, his tone leaving no room for argument. And you will accompany her. Your sole focus will be monitoring her condition. The stress of these events can trigger episodes. Elena wanted to refuse. The thought of entering that world, of standing among people who could buy and sell her 1,000 times over, made her stomach churn. But Bella's hand had found hers under the breakfast table, squeezing tight with silent desperation. I'll be there, Elena said. The transformation began 6 hours before the event. A team of stylists descended upon Elena's room with garment bags, makeup cases, and an authority that brooked no resistance. They waxed, plucked, painted, and primped until Elena barely recognized the woman staring back from the mirror. The dress was emerald green silk that flowed like water over her curves. Her hair had been swept up in an elegant twist, and diamonds sparkled at her ears and throat. Real diamonds, she realized with a start. Worth more than she could have earned in a lifetime at Rosario's diner. You look like a princess, Sophia breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Even prettier than Cinderella. Elena knelt down, careful not to wrinkle the impossibly expensive fabric. You be good for Mrs. Patterson tonight, okay? I'll come kiss you goodnight when I get home. Sophia nodded solemnly. Tell Bella I said good luck. The ballroom was a cathedral of crystal and gold. Chandeliers dripped light onto hundreds of guests draped in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Champagne flowed like water, and the air hummed with conversation, laughter, and the subtle electricity of barely concealed ambition. Elena felt every eye turn toward them as they entered. Dominic walked with Bella on one side and Elena on the other, his presence commanding attention like a force of nature. Whispers followed in their wake. Who is she? The new nurse, apparently. She cleans up well for hired help. Elena kept her chin high and her expression neutral, one hand resting protectively on Bella's shoulder. The girl was trembling slightly, overwhelmed by the noise and the crowds. It's okay, Elena murmured. I'm right here. They had barely made it past the entrance when a figure stepped into their path. Victor Castellano was smaller than Elena had imagined, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of tan that came from winters in warmer climates. His smile was warm, his handshake firm, and his eyes were absolutely empty of anything resembling humanity. Dominic, he said smoothly, so good to see you supporting such a worthy cause. And little Isabella, growing more beautiful every year. She looks so much like her mother. The temperature around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dominic's expression didn't change, but Elena felt the violence coiling beneath his calm surface. Victor, I wasn't aware you'd be attending. I wouldn't miss it. Castellano's gaze slid to Elena, assessing her with reptilian interest. And who is this lovely creature? A new addition to your household? My daughter's medical companion. Ah. The smile widened. Another one. I do hope this one lasts longer than the others. Such a tragedy when they leave so suddenly. The threat hung in the air like poison. Then Elena felt it. Bella's hand going slack in hers. The slight tremor, the sudden pallor creeping across the girl's face. She looked down and her blood ran cold. Bella's lips were turning gray. Elena didn't think. She acted. In one fluid motion, she swept Bella into her arms, ignoring the startled gasps from nearby guests. The girl was light, too light, her body already going limp as her blood sugar plummeted. Move, Elena commanded, her voice cutting through the ambient noise with an authority she didn't know she possessed. Guests scattered as she pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for somewhere quiet, somewhere away from the chaos. A service corridor. Elena shouldered through the door and lowered Bella onto the floor, her hands already reaching for the emergency kit she had insisted on carrying despite how it clashed with her designer clutch. Stay with me, sweetheart. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, checking the glucose monitor, confirming what she already knew. 42. Dangerously, terrifyingly low. I've got you. The glucagon injection was ready in seconds. Elena found the site on Bella's thigh, administered the dose, and began counting under her breath. Around her, she could hear commotion building, doors slamming, voices shouting, running footsteps. 30 seconds. Bella's eyelids fluttered. 60 seconds. Color began creeping back into her cheeks. 90 seconds. The girl's eyes opened, confused and frightened. Elena? Bella's voice was weak, trembling. What happened? Your sugar dropped. Honey, you're okay now. I've got you. The service door burst open and Dominic Rossetti appeared, his face a mask of raw terror that Elena had never seen before. The composed crime lord had vanished completely, replaced by a father confronting every parent's worst nightmare. Isabella. He dropped to his knees beside them, his hands shaking as he reached for his daughter. Is she? She's fine. Elena kept her voice calm, steady, an anchor in the storm of his panic. Her glucose crashed, but I caught it in time. The glucagon is already working. She just needs to rest and eat something soon. For a moment, Dominic simply stared at her, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. Then he gathered Bella into his arms, holding her so tightly that Elena worried he might hurt her. Papa, Bella's small arms wrapped around his neck. I'm okay. Elena sobbed me. Over his daughter's shoulder, Dominic's eyes met Elena's. Something passed between them, something that made Elena's breath catch. Gratitude, certainly. Relief, but underneath, something deeper, something that looked almost like wonder. Don't leave me, Bella whispered, and Elena realized the girl was talking to her, not her father. Please don't ever leave me. Elena reached out and stroked Bella's hair. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise. Through the open door, Elena caught a glimpse of the ballroom. Victor Castellano stood at the edge of the crowd, watching the commotion with a smile that made her skin crawl. He raised his champagne glass in a small, mocking toast before turning away. The ride home was silent except for Bella's soft breathing as she slept against Elena's shoulder. Dominic sat across from them, his eyes never leaving his daughter's peaceful face. That's twice now, he said quietly, as the mansion gates came into view. Twice you've saved her life, when others would have panicked or frozen. I was just doing my job. No. Dominic's gaze shifted to Elena, and what she saw there made her heart stutter. You were doing much more than that. The SUV stopped, but neither of them moved. In the dim light, with his defenses lowered and his gratitude raw and honest, Dominic Rossetti looked almost human, almost reachable. Elena told herself that the warmth spreading through her chest was simply relief that Bella was safe. Nothing more. 2 months passed like water through open fingers, each day weaving Elena deeper into the fabric of the Rossetti household, until she could no longer imagine existing outside its walls. Bella had stopped testing her. The defiant child who once hid her glucose monitor and refused to eat on schedule now sought Elena out for everything: homework help, bedtime stories, advice on which dress to wear to school. She had started calling Elena Lena, a nickname that no one else was permitted to use. Lena, Sophia took my purple crayon. Lena, can we have pancakes for breakfast? Lena, will you braid my hair like yours? Each small request was a brick in the foundation of trust they were building together, a trust that Elena protected as fiercely as she protected Bella's health. Sophia had blossomed in ways that made Elena's heart ache with gratitude. The hollow-cheeked, hungry child who had clutched a crust of bread on a park bench was gone, replaced by a rosy-faced little girl who laughed freely and ate 3 meals a day without worrying where the next one would come from. She and Bella had become inseparable, sharing a room by choice, whispering secrets in the dark, fighting over toys like real sisters. Elena had returned to nursing school, attending classes 3 days a week while a trusted nanny watched the girls. She hadn't asked Dominic for help with tuition, had been prepared to take out yet another loan she couldn't afford. But when she logged into the student portal, she found her balance at 0, paid in full. She had confronted him about it, pride flaring. He had simply looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes and said, "Consider it an investment in my daughter's care." She let it go. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The evening conversations began without either of them acknowledging what was happening. After the girls fell asleep, Elena would wander to the library for a book, and Dominic would be there, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring into the fireplace. At first, they barely spoke, then a comment about the weather, a question about Bella's day, a shared observation about Sophia's latest antics. Gradually, the walls came down. "Her name was Catherine," Dominic said one night, his voice rough with memories. "We met when I was 23. She knew exactly what I was, and she loved me anyway. She was the only person who ever saw past the monster." Elena sat across from him, her tea growing cold in her hands. What happened to her? The Castellanos. The name was a curse on his lips. They couldn't get to me directly, so they took the only thing that mattered, made it look like an accident. Bella was 3. The grief in his voice was a living thing, raw and bleeding even after 5 years. "My parents died in a car crash," Elena heard herself say. "A drunk driver ran a red light. Sophia was 2. I was 24, barely out of college, suddenly responsible for a toddler I had no idea how to raise. You've done well with her. I've done my best. Some days that doesn't feel like enough." Their eyes met across the firelight, and Elena saw her own wounds reflected in his gaze. 2 broken people, trying desperately to protect what remained of their shattered families. "More tea?" Dominic asked, rising to refill her cup. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed against the warm porcelain. Neither of them moved. Neither of them pulled away. The fire crackled, the clock ticked, and something fragile and terrifying took root in the space between them. The fragile peace shattered on a Tuesday morning. Elena was helping Sophia with her breakfast when Marcus strode into the dining room, his face carved from stone. He didn't acknowledge her presence, moving directly to Dominic's side and leaning close to murmur something that made the crime lord's expression harden into something terrifying. "How long?" Dominic asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "At least a week, maybe longer. They're good, but we spotted them last night doing a shift change." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Double the perimeter security. I want eyes on every entrance, every exit. No one comes in or out without my approval." Marcus nodded and disappeared. Within hours, the mansion transformed. Additional guards materialized at every corner. Security cameras that Elena had never noticed before were checked and rechecked. The iron gates remained closed, and armed men patrolled the grounds with barely concealed weapons. Bella noticed the changes immediately. "Why are there so many guards, Lena?" "Just extra precautions, sweetheart." Elena forced a smile she didn't feel. Nothing to worry about. But she was worried. She was terrified. The package arrived 3 days later. Elena was in the library when Dominic summoned her to his office. His face was pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. On his desk lay a manila envelope, its contents spread across the polished mahogany surface. Photographs. Dozens of them. Elena picking Sophia up from school. Elena walking through the grocery store, checking prices on cereal boxes. Elena sitting in the park while Sophia played on the swings. Elena leaving her nursing class, textbooks clutched to her chest. Every image was taken from a distance, shot through telephoto lenses by someone who had been watching, waiting, documenting her every move. Her hands shook as she picked up the last photograph. Sophia, laughing on the playground, completely unaware of the predator tracking her through a camera lens. A note had been tucked beneath the pictures, typed on expensive cream paper. The most precious things are always the easiest to lose. Elena's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. I have to leave. The words came out broken, desperate. I have to take Sophia and go. We're putting everyone in danger. No. Dominic was beside her in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. Running won't protect you. Castellano has resources everywhere. The moment you leave my protection, you become an easy target. Then what do? You stay. You trust me. His grip tightened, his gaze burning with an intensity that stole her breath. I swear to you, Elena, no one will touch you or Sophia. I will burn down anyone who tries. She wanted to argue, to scream, to grab her sister and flee into the night. But where would they go? Back to the streets? Back to the endless cycle of poverty and desperation? She had nowhere to run. She had nothing but the word of a dangerous man who had already become far more to her than he should. That night, Elena moved the girls into the mansion's secure wing. Bella and Sophia slept curled together in a fortified bedroom with steel-reinforced doors and bulletproof windows. Elena sat in a chair beside their bed, watching them breathe, unable to close her eyes. Outside, guards patrolled with flashlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, the grandfather clock in the hallway marked each passing hour with solemn chimes. Then, at 3:17 in the morning, the explosion ripped through the night. The mansion shook, glass shattered somewhere distant, and the security alarms began to scream. Elena was on her feet before the alarms finished their first wail, her body moving on pure instinct. She scooped Sophia into her arms while grabbing Bella's hand, pulling both girls away from the windows. What's happening? Bella's voice trembled, her face pale in the darkness. Lena, what was that sound? Stay low, stay quiet. Elena guided them into the corner farthest from any windows, positioning herself between the children and the door. Everything's going to be okay. She didn't believe her own words. Footsteps thundered past their door. Voices shouted commands in clipped, urgent tones. Then Dominic burst into the room, flanked by Marcus and 2 armed guards. His eyes swept the scene, cataloging Elena's protective stance, the frightened children, the intact windows. Everyone's safe, Elena reported, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. It was a car. Marcus checked his phone, reading updates in real time, drove straight into the front gates, exploded on impact. No breach of the main perimeter. Casualties? 2 guards injured. Nothing critical. Dominic's expression hardened into something Elena had never seen before. The man who had held her hand over a teacup, who had spoken of his dead wife with grief in his voice, had vanished completely. In his place stood the crime lord, cold and calculating and utterly ruthless. A message, he said quietly. Castellano is showing us he can reach us whenever he wants. What do we do? Elena asked. You leave. Tonight. Dominic turned to Marcus. Activate the Lake Geneva property. Full security protocol. No one knows they're there except you and me. Marcus nodded and began issuing orders into his phone. I want the traitor found. Dominic's voice dropped to something barely human. Someone gave Castellano our security schedules, our routines. Find them. Bring them to me. The look in his eyes made Elena's blood run cold. She understood, in that moment, exactly what kind of man she had allowed herself to care for, what kind of justice he would deliver to whoever had betrayed them. Within the hour, Elena and the girls were bundled into an armored SUV, speeding through dark streets toward an unknown destination. Dominic stayed behind, his tall figure framed in the mansion's doorway as they drove away. Elena watched him shrink in the rearview mirror until the gates closed and he disappeared from view. The safe house was a modest cabin on a wooded property, invisible from the main road, surrounded by motion sensors and armed guards. It should have felt secure. Instead, Elena felt like an animal in a trap. Bella's glucose levels spiked from the stress, then crashed 2 hours later. Elena worked through the night, adjusting insulin dosages, monitoring readings, forcing the girl to eat small amounts of carefully measured food. Sophia clung to her whenever she wasn't tending to Bella, crying silent tears that broke Elena's heart. Dawn crept through the curtains, pale and uncertain. The girls finally slept, exhausted from terror and tears. Elena sat between their beds, her body aching, her mind racing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. 3 words that turned her blood to ice. "We know where your sister is." Elena's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She read the message again, then again, each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. They knew. Somehow, impossibly, Castellano's people knew exactly where they were hiding. Before she could process the implications, her phone buzzed again. "Bring the Rossetti girl to the front gate at midnight. Alone. Your sister lives. Refuse, and we take her instead. You have 12 hours to decide." The world tilted beneath Elena's feet. She pressed her back against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the cold floor, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare she would wake from any moment. But the phone in her hand was real. The sleeping children in the next room were real, and the impossible choice she faced was devastatingly, terrifyingly real. They wanted Bella, the 8-year-old girl who had finally learned to trust again, who called her Lena and asked for bedtime stories, who had become as precious to Elena as her own blood. The alternative was Sophia, her baby sister, the child she had sworn to protect with her last breath. Elena pressed her fist against her mouth to muffle the sob that tore from her throat. How could she choose? How could anyone choose between 2 children they loved? But even as despair threatened to consume her, a steel core inside Elena refused to bend. She would not sacrifice one child to save another. She would not become the kind of monster who traded innocent lives like playing cards. There had to be another way. Her fingers found Dominic's contact before her mind caught up with her actions. The phone rang once, twice, and then his voice filled her ear, sharp with concern. "Elena? What's wrong?" The words poured out in a torrent. The messages, the threat, the deadline. She told him everything, her voice breaking on the parts where she had to say Sophia's name and Bella's in the same sentence as words like take and refuse. Silence stretched across the line when she finished. For one horrible moment, Elena thought he had hung up, had abandoned her to face this nightmare alone. Then Dominic spoke, and his voice was forged from iron. "Listen to me carefully. Do not respond to those messages. Do not go near the gates. Do not let the girls out of your sight for even a second. But they know where we are. They could. I'm already on my way. 40 minutes. His tone left no room for argument. "Trust me, Elena. I will not let them take either of those children. I swear it on my life." The call ended. Elena was left alone with the silence and her terror. 40 minutes, 2,400 seconds standing between safety and catastrophe. She checked on the girls. Both still sleeping. Sophia's small hand reaching toward Bella's bed, even in unconsciousness. So innocent. So vulnerable. So completely dependent on Elena to keep the monsters at bay. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Elena paced the cabin like a caged animal, jumping at every shadow, every creak of the old wooden floors. Then she heard it. A soft scraping sound from the back of the house, the careful rattle of a doorknob being tested. Someone was trying to get in. Elena moved faster than she ever had in her life. She swept Sophia from her bed with one arm, grabbing Bella with the other, dragging both girls toward the cabin's interior bathroom. It was the only room without windows, the only place with a lock heavy enough to buy them time. "Lena, what's happening?" Bella's voice was thick with sleep and fear. "Quiet, sweetheart, not a sound." Elena pressed both children into the bathtub, pulling a heavy blanket over them. Sophia whimpered, her small fingers clutching Elena's wrist. "Stay here. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. No matter what you hear." She kissed Sophia's forehead, squeezed Bella's hand, and then she was moving again, pulling the bathroom door shut behind her and turning the deadbolt with trembling fingers. The kitchen. She needed a weapon. Her hand closed around the largest knife in the block, a chef's blade that gleamed in the darkness. It was pathetic defense against armed men, but it was something. It was all she had. The scraping at the back door had stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Elena positioned herself between the bathroom and the main entrance, her back against the wall, the knife raised and ready. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain the intruders could hear it. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. Then the world exploded. Gunfire shattered the quiet, rapid bursts of violence that made Elena cry out involuntarily. Shouts echoed through the night, men's voices barking commands in harsh tones. Something crashed through the front window. More shots. A scream cut short. Elena pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle her own screams. The children. She had to protect the children. Nothing else mattered. Footsteps thundered across the porch. The front door burst inward, and Elena raised her knife with a sob, prepared to fight and die. Elena! Dominic stood in the doorway, his white shirt spattered with crimson, his chest heaving, a gun still smoking in his hand. Behind him, Elena could see bodies on the ground, men in dark clothing who would never move again. The knife clattered from her nerveless fingers. "Safe," Dominic said, crossing the room in 3 strides. "You're safe. They're gone." The girl's Elena's voice broke. "They're in the bathroom. I told them to hide." Dominic nodded and moved past her, knocking on the bathroom door with deliberate gentleness. "Isabella? It's Papa. You can come out now." The deadbolt turned. The door cracked open, and then Bella was flying into her father's arms, sobbing against his blood-stained shirt. "Papa! I was so scared. Bad men were trying to get in." "I know, Principessa. I know." Dominic held her close, his eyes closing briefly. "But they're gone now. No one will hurt you." Sophia emerged behind her sister, running straight to Elena and burying her face in Elena's stomach. "Ellie, I heard loud noises. Like fireworks, but scary. It's over now, mija." Elena lifted her sister into her arms, pressing kisses to her hair, her cheeks, her forehead. "It's over." Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "We've secured the perimeter. 3 intruders neutralized, 1 captured alive." "Who sent them?" Dominic asked, his voice hard. "Castellano's men. But that's not the worst part." Marcus hesitated. "We traced the leak. The information about this location came from inside our organization, one of the guards assigned to the safe house." Dominic's expression transformed into something that made Elena's blood run cold. The loving father vanished, replaced by the predator who had built an empire on blood and fear. "Bring him to me. Already done." Dominic pressed a kiss to Bella's head, then carefully transferred her to Elena's arms. The 2 girls clung together, both reaching for Elena as their anchor in the chaos. "Take them somewhere safe," Dominic instructed. "Don't let them see what happens next." He turned toward the door, pausing only to look back at Elena. His dark eyes held a promise that was both terrifying and reassuring. This ends now. Once and for all, the mansion had transformed into a fortress. Armed guards patrolled every corridor. Security cameras multiplied overnight, their unblinking eyes covering every angle, every entrance, every shadow. The iron gates remained sealed, reinforced with additional barriers that hadn't existed before. No one entered or left without passing through 3 separate checkpoints. Elena tried to maintain normalcy for the girls. She read them stories, helped with homework, monitored Bella's glucose levels with extra vigilance given the stress they had all endured. But the tension that permeated the house was impossible to ignore. Bella jumped at sudden noises. Sophia had started sleeping in Elena's bed, afraid to close her eyes alone. 3 days after the safe house attack, Elena woke at midnight to find the space beside her empty. Sophia's warmth had been replaced by cold sheets. Panic seized her throat as she ran into the hallway, her bare feet silent on the marble floors. Sophia wasn't in the bathroom, wasn't in Bella's room, wasn't anywhere Elena looked. Then she heard voices drifting from downstairs. Dominic's study. Elena descended the staircase, her fear gradually shifting to confusion. The study doors stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the darkened hallway. She approached slowly, intending to retrieve Sophia, but the words she heard froze her in place. "Confirmed that Castellano will be at the warehouse on Friday." Marcus's voice, clinical and precise. "Minimal security. He thinks we're still recovering from the safe house breach. Then we strike Friday." Dominic's tone was ice. "Full team. No survivors. I want the Castellano threat eliminated permanently. And Victor himself?" The pause that stretched into eternity. "Victor dies by my hand. For Catherine. For Isabella. For everything he's taken from me." Elena's stomach turned to stone. She had known, intellectually, what Dominic was capable of. But hearing him plan murder with the same calm he used to discuss breakfast menus made the reality unavoidable. The man she had grown to care for was planning to kill someone. Not in self-defense, not in the heat of battle, but deliberately, systematically. Finally, she must have made a sound, because suddenly the study doors swung fully open and Dominic stood before her. His dark eyes took in her pale face, her trembling hands, the horror she couldn't quite conceal. "Sophia had a nightmare," Elena managed. "I was looking for her. She's asleep on my couch." Dominic's voice was carefully neutral. "She wandered down here an hour ago. I didn't want to wake you." Elena nodded, but neither of them moved. The words she had overheard hung between them like a blade. "You heard. It wasn't a question." "Enough." Dominic stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "I won't apologize for what I am, Elena. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. Castellano threatened my daughter. He threatened Sofia. He threatened you. In my world, there's only one response to that. Murder. Protection. His jaw tightened. This is who I am. This is the life I was born into. If you can't accept that, I understand. I'll arrange safe passage for you and Sofia. You'll never have to see me again. Elena thought of Bella, who had finally learned to smile. Of Sofia, who now had enough to eat and a warm bed and a future. Of the man before her, who had shown her tenderness and violence in equal measure. She thought of Catherine, murdered by the same men who now hunted them all. I don't accept your world, Elena said slowly. I don't accept the killing, the violence, the blood on your hands. Dominic's expression flickered with something that might have been pain, but I accept you. Elena met his eyes without flinching. God help me, I accept you. The days that followed were deceptively peaceful. Elena almost allowed herself to believe the worst had passed. The increased security seemed impenetrable. Dominic's men patrolled with renewed vigilance after the traitor had been discovered. The girls returned to their routines, attending school together, playing in the garden under watchful eyes, slowly recovering from the trauma of the safe house attack. Friday approached, the day Dominic had planned to end the Castellano threat forever. Elena tried not to think about what that meant, focusing instead on the future that might finally be possible once the shadow of danger lifted from their lives. Thursday afternoon arrived warm and bright, the first hint of spring softening the Chicago winter. Can we get ice cream on the way home? Sofia begged as Elena helped her into her school uniform. Please, Ellie. Bella said there's a place near school with rainbow sprinkles. Elena smiled, adjusting her sister's ponytail. We'll see. Be good today, okay? I'm always good. Bella appeared at the door, her backpack already strapped on, looking healthier than Elena had ever seen her. The glucose monitor on her arm blinked steadily, her levels perfect after a carefully measured breakfast. Come on, Sofia. We'll miss the bus. Elena watched them go, flanked by their assigned bodyguard. A new man, brought in after the security purge, vetted personally by Marcus, or so she had been told. She spent the morning studying for her nursing exams, trying to concentrate on pharmacology despite the anxiety that never quite left her chest. When her phone rang at 2:30, she assumed it was the school calling about a forgotten lunch or a minor scrape. Marcus's voice shattered that assumption. Elena, you need to come to the main house. Now. Something in his tone turned her blood to ice. What happened? Is it Bella? Is her sugar? Bella's fine. Just come. Quickly. Elena ran. She found them in the foyer. Dominic stood like a statue, his face carved from granite. Marcus was on his phone, barking orders in rapid-fire Italian. Guards rushed past in organized chaos. And Bella sat on the bottom stair, clutching her teddy bear, tears streaming down her face. Alone? Where's Sofia? Elena heard herself ask, though her mind already knew, already felt the truth crushing her chest like a physical weight. No one answered. Where is my sister? Dominic turned to face her, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something like helplessness in his eyes. The bodyguard, he said quietly. He was one of Castellano's. Deep cover. We didn't catch it. The world tilted. Elena grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. He took Sofia from the car 3 blocks from school. Bella saw everything. She tried to hold on to her, but no. The word came out as a whisper. Then louder. No. No, no, no. Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed against Dominic, her fists pounding against his chest with desperate fury. You promised. The scream tore from her throat, raw and animalistic. You swore you would protect her. You promised me. Dominic caught her wrists, absorbing her blows without flinching. Elena, she's 5 years old. She's just a baby. She's all I have left. The sobs consumed her then, violent and overwhelming. She sagged against him, her strength evaporating, her world crumbling to ash. Sofia's face swam before her eyes. Sofia's laugh. Sofia's tiny hand reaching for her in the darkness. Gone. Taken. Because Elena had trusted the wrong people, made the wrong choices, dragged her innocent sister into a world of monsters. Dominic's arms wrapped around her, holding her upright when she couldn't hold herself. His voice rumbled against her hair, low and fierce and absolute. Listen to me. He tilted her face up, forcing her to meet his blazing eyes. I will bring Sofia home. Do you understand me? I will find her, and I will bring her back to you. How? Elena choked. They could be anywhere. They could already have. They won't hurt her. She's leverage. Castellano wants to draw me out, and now he has the perfect bait. Then give him what he wants. Trade yourself. Trade me. I don't care. Just bring her back. Dominic's expression hardened into something terrifying and beautiful. I'm going to bring her back. And then I'm going to burn Victor Castellano's entire world to ashes around him. His hands framed her face, gentle despite the violence promised in his voice. I will get Sofia back, Elena, even if I have to tear this city apart to do it. 6 hours. 6 endless hours of waiting, pacing, praying to a god Elena wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Then Marcus burst through the door, his phone pressed to his ear, and Elena knew before he spoke that they had found her. Abandoned warehouse on the south side, Castellano's old distribution center. Marcus spread a blueprint across Dominic's desk. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 hostiles. One small heat signature in the back office. Has to be Sofia. Elena's heart seized. Alive. Sofia was still alive. I'm going with you. Every head in the room turned toward her. Dominic's expression hardened. Absolutely not. She's my sister. Elena's voice didn't waver. She's 5 years old, and she's been taken by monsters. When you find her, she's going to be terrified. She needs to see a face she knows, hear a voice she trusts. She needs me. It's too dangerous. I don't care. Elena stepped closer, meeting his dark eyes without flinching. You can lock me in this house, but the moment you leave, I'll find a way to follow. I'm going, Dominic, with your help or without it. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Dominic reached into his pocket and pressed something cold into her palm. A small device, no bigger than a coin, with a single red button. Tracking beacon, he said quietly. If anything goes wrong, if we get separated, press this and my men will find you. Stay behind me at all times. Do exactly what I say. Understood? Elena nodded, her fingers closing around the device like a lifeline. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, a decaying monument to forgotten industry. Dominic's team moved like shadows, eliminating guards with silent efficiency. Elena stayed close behind him, her heart pounding, her eyes straining through the darkness. They breached the main entrance without a sound. Bodies lay in their wake, men who would never threaten another child. Elena didn't look at them. She couldn't afford to think about what was happening around her. Only Sofia mattered. The back office door stood at the end of a long corridor. Light seeped from beneath it, a thin golden line in the darkness. Wait here, Dominic breathed. But Elena was already moving. She pushed through the door and there was Sofia, huddled in the corner of a filthy room, her school uniform torn, her face streaked with tears, but alive, breathing, whole. Ellie. Sofia's scream echoed off the concrete walls as she scrambled toward her sister. Elena caught her, dropping to her knees, crushing the small body against her chest. I'm here, Mija. I'm here. I've got you. Well, isn't this touching? The voice came from behind them. Elena spun, pushing Sofia behind her, and found herself staring into the barrel of a gun. Victor Castellano stood in the doorway, his silver hair immaculate, his smile cold as winter. Behind him, 2 armed men blocked any escape. The famous nursemaid. Castellano's eyes glittered with cruel amusement. I must admit, I expected Rossetti himself to come charging in. Sending a woman first seems beneath him. Let my sister go. Elena's voice emerged steady, though her body trembled. She's a child. She has nothing to do with your war. On the contrary, she has everything to do with it now. Castellano raised his weapon, aiming directly at Elena's chest. You see, I've realized that killing Rossetti isn't enough. I want him to suffer first. Losing another woman he cares about should accomplish that nicely. Elena straightened, spreading her arms to shield Sofia completely. Then kill me, but let her go. She's 5 years old. Even in your world, there are lines you don't cross. Touching. Castellano's finger tightened on the trigger. But I'm afraid, Victor. The single word cut through the warehouse like a blade. Castellano's smile faltered as he turned to find Dominic Rossetti standing behind him, gun pressed to the base of his skull. The 2 guards were already on the ground, motionless. You touched my family. Dominic's voice was barely human, a rumble of dark promise. That was your final mistake. The gun clattered from Castellano's hand as Dominic's men materialized from the shadows, surrounding him in a circle of cold steel and colder eyes. Take him, Dominic commanded, his voice devoid of emotion. You know where. Elena didn't watch as they dragged Castellano away. She didn't need to know what would happen in the hours that followed, what justice would be delivered in the darkness far from any courtroom. Some things were better left unseen, unknowed, unremembered. All that mattered was the small body trembling in her arms. Ellie. Sofia's voice was broken, hoarse from crying. I was so scared. The bad man said you weren't coming. He said nobody would find me. Elena held her tighter, her tears falling freely into Sophia's tangled hair. I will always find you, Mija. Always, no matter what. Dominic appeared beside them, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. Blood stained his knuckles, but his hands were steady as he shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around Sophia's shivering form. We need to move, he said quietly. This place won't stay clear for long. The ride back to the mansion passed in a blur of darkness and exhaustion. Sophia fell asleep almost instantly, curled in Elena's lap, her small fingers clutching Elena's shirt even in unconsciousness. Bella sat pressed against them both, her hand resting on Sophia's back as if to reassure herself that the younger girl was real, was safe, was home. Dominic drove in silence, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, but Elena caught him glancing in the rearview mirror, his gaze lingering on the three figures huddled together in the back seat. Something shifted in his expression each time, something soft and fierce and terribly vulnerable. Dawn was breaking by the time they passed through the mansion's reinforced gates. Dr. Morrison was waiting, summoned from sleep to examine both children. He pronounced them physically unharmed, though he recommended rest and watchful care for the psychological trauma they had endured. Elena tucked the girls into Bella's bed together, unable to bear separating them. They fell asleep holding hands, their breathing synchronized, two sisters bound not by blood but by something stronger. She found herself on the balcony outside the master wing, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Her hands still trembled. She wasn't sure they would ever stop. Footsteps approached behind her, and then Dominic was there, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. It's over, he said. Castellano is gone. His organization is finished. No one will threaten you or Sophia again. Elena nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. You can leave now, if you want. Dominic's voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. I'll provide enough money for you to start fresh somewhere far from here. New identities, new life. You and Sophia can forget any of this ever happened. The offer hung in the morning air, generous and terrible all at once. Elena turned to face him, searching his dark eyes for the truth beneath his words. Is that what you want? She asked softly. For me to go? Dominic was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun continued its slow ascent. Elena watched the struggle play across his features, the battle between the walls he had built around his heart and something far more vulnerable trying to break through. What I want, he finally said, his voice rough, has never mattered in my world. What I want gets people killed. What I want is a weakness my enemies exploit. That's not what I asked. He turned to face her, and Elena saw it then. The longing he had hidden beneath layers of ice and authority. The hope he had buried with his wife 5 years ago. I want you to stay. The words seemed to cost him everything. Not for Bella, not because you're the best medical companion she's ever had. I want you to stay, because this house has been empty for 5 years, and I didn't realize it until you filled it. Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. Dominic, you made me remember what it feels like to want something for myself. To imagine a future beyond the next threat, the next war, the next enemy to destroy. He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face. I want you, Elena. I want mornings watching you laugh with the girls. I want evenings talking by the fire. I want to wake up knowing you're here, that you chose to be here. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks, but for the first time in longer than she could remember. They weren't tears of grief or fear. I came here for a job, she whispered. I stayed for Bella. But now, she closed the distance between them, her hand pressing against his chest where his heart beat strong and steady. Now I stay for you. Dominic's fingers traced the line of her jaw, tilting her face upward. The first light of dawn caught the gold in his dark eyes as he lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two wounded souls learning to trust again. Then it deepened. Years of loneliness and longing pouring out in a single perfect moment as the sun rose behind them. 6 months later, Elena stood in the garden of the Rossetti mansion, a diploma clutched in her hands and happy tears streaming down her face. I'm so proud of you, Lena. Bella threw her arms around Elena's waist, careful not to jostle the glucose monitor that had become as familiar as breathing. Her levels had been stable for months now, her health better than it had ever been under Elena's watchful care. Me too. Me too. Sophia bounced beside them, her purple dress twirling as she spun. Ellie is the smartest nurse in the whole world. The whole world might be an exaggeration. Elena laughed, scooping her sister into her arms. At 5.5, Sophia had grown taller, healthier, her cheeks round and rosy with good nutrition and boundless joy. It's not an exaggeration. Dominic appeared behind them, his hand coming to rest on the small of Elena's back with casual possessiveness. You graduated top of your class while managing the most difficult patient in Chicago. Hey, Bella protested, but she was grinning. Sophia wriggled out of Elena's arms and ran to Dominic, lifting her arms in the universal gesture of a child demanding to be held. He picked her up without hesitation, settling her on his hip as naturally as if he had done it 1,000 times. Dad, Dom, can we have cake now? The name still made Elena's heart flutter every time she heard it. Sophia had started calling him that 3 months ago, after he had spent an entire afternoon helping her build a pillow fort and reading her favorite storybook in funny voices. Cake comes after dinner, Dominic said firmly. House rules. But Bella said Bella is not in charge of dessert schedules. Elena watched them bicker affectionately. Her family, this impossible family forged from tragedy and hope and stubborn, defiant love. The diamond on her left hand caught the afternoon light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the grass. Dominic had proposed on a quiet evening 2 months ago, without fanfare or grand gestures, just the two of them on the balcony where they had first admitted their feelings. I can't promise you safety, he had said, sliding the ring onto her finger. I can't promise you normal, but I can promise you that I will spend every day of my life trying to deserve you. She had kissed him instead of answering, because some promises didn't need words. Now she stood in the garden of a mansion that had once terrified her, surrounded by laughter and love, and the sweet chaos of children who had become her whole world. A year ago, Elena Martinez had been a broke nursing student washing dishes for minimum wage, facing eviction, unable to afford bus fare, wondering how she would feed her baby sister. She had stumbled through a dark alley and found a dying child, and in saving that child's life, she had saved her own. Not just saved, transformed. Sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness, a moment of compassion in the darkness, a choice to stop when others would walk by, a refusal to abandon a stranger, even when every logical reason said to run. Elena had learned that love doesn't always come in expected packages. Sometimes it wears a dangerous face and speaks in commands. Sometimes it hides behind walls built from grief and violence. Sometimes it finds you in the worst moment of your life and refuses to let go. She looked at her family gathered in the golden afternoon light. Bella, healthy and thriving and finally believing she wouldn't be abandoned. Sophia, no longer hungry or afraid, blooming into a confident little girl who knew she was cherished. And Dominic, the dangerous man who had become her safe harbor, watching her with eyes full of wonder that she had chosen him. A girl who once had nothing now had everything, because on one cold December night, she had stopped to help a stranger. Thank you so much for following this story to the very end. If this journey touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss our daily stories of love, hope, and second chances. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever experienced a moment where a small act of kindness changed everything? Perhaps you've been the one to help a stranger, or perhaps someone's unexpected compassion transformed your own life. Please share your thoughts and experiences with us. Every comment means the world to our community, and we read each and every one with grateful hearts. Remember, in a world that can sometimes feel dark and overwhelming, kindness is a light that never goes out. You never know when your small act of compassion might become someone else's miracle. We wish you good health, abundant joy, and peace in your heart every single day. May your life be filled with the same love and hope that Elena found when she least expected it. Thank you for being part of our family. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video with another beautiful story waiting to be told. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.